Tonight, Japan braces for yet another super typhoon. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 17th. Once again, we are code red on our tropical cyclone operations scale, and our main feature tonight is Super Typhoon Nanmadol, which is expected to impact the entire country of Japan with incredibly strong winds. Elsewhere is Tropical Storm Fiona, which is already impacting the Leeward Islands and is heading towards the Caribean islands. Out in the eastern Pacific is Tropical Storm Lesser, heading towards the coastline of Mexico. And without mention are the remnants of BOB08 and extratropical cyclone Nanmadol. In the Atlantic, on day 110, we have Tropical Storm Fiona, which is headed westwards, currently impacting the Leeward Islands and headed for the Caribbean. To Fiona's nearabouts north is an area of interest headed eastwards with a 10% chance of formation. And headed northwards, in the open ocean, there is another area of interest with a 20% chance of formation. Over in the eastern Pacific, Lester continues to terrorize the coastline of Mexico as it heads towards it. And 94E is still active and has had its formation chances slowly growing, now up to a 90% chance of formation. The West Pacific once again sees the main star of the show being Super Typhoon Nanmadol, now a Category 4, however it has weakened from its earlier Category 5 peak, but the worst is not yet over as the system is expected to slam into the island of Kyushu, then move northeast, impacting the entire country of Japan. Elsewhere active is extratropical cyclone Nanmadol, currently in the Bering Strait in the Aleutian Islands. So technically it's in the central Pacific, but it's not visible here as it's too far north. And in the North Indian Ocean, the remnants of BOB08 persist in the north of India. Now, we don't expect this system to last for too much longer, as our internal analyst team have issued their final fix on this system. On to satellite imagery now, and the first thing that catches your eye, I bet, will be Tropical Storm Fiona, headed westwards towards the Caribbean. Elsewhere, there are two AOIs with a 10 and 20% chance of formation respectively. The 10% one is headed towards Bermuda, whilst the 20% one is headed northwards out into open waters. 94E is slowly getting its act together out to sea, slapped with a 90% chance of formation. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Lester is expected to gradually near the Mexican coastline before eventually touching it and making its eventual landfall. Nanmadol looking absolutely stunning on satellite, weakened from an earlier Category 5 peak though, still an incredibly dangerous threat to the entire country of Japan. Now, the remnants of BOB08 are barely visible on satellite. Elsewhere, in the North Indian Ocean, there is nothing out of the ordinary active right about now, but as we approach the second peak of the North Indian Ocean season, who knows what will happen. Super Typhoon Nanmadol is expected to slam into Japan and turn northeast, impacting the entire country as it does so. As it does this, it is also expected to weaken quite substantially, which is a good thing. This system has already reached Category 5 strength once, which just shows you how powerful this system is, and it's not too far out from land right now, which is not a good thing. Tropical Storm Fiona is expected to impact the Caribbean islands in a few days' time, and right now is impacting the Leeward Islands. Now, as this storm emerges off the Caribbean, it is expected to intensify into a hurricane if this cone that is on your screen right now is to be believed. Now, Lester isn't expected to last long, but before it goes, it is expected to impact Mexico as a tropical storm, dissipating shortly afterwards. So here's a closer look at Super Typhoon Nanmadol, a Category 4 equivalent storm currently located at 26.1 degrees north and 133.1 degrees east, with a wind speed of 155 miles an hour and a central pressure of 914 millibars. This system, at least according to the JTWC's cone, is expected to grow back into a Category 5 before weakening before landfall. Now, as it traverses inland, it is expected to weaken further as it moves across the entire country, emerging back off the coast of near around Sendai as a tropical storm. Next up is a closer look at Tropical Storm Fiona, which is currently located at 16.4 degrees north and 61.8 degrees west, with a wind speed of 50 miles an hour and a central pressure of 1005 millibars. Now, this system is expected to continue westward, moving over the Caribbean, and once it does that, it is expected to curve northwards. And whilst it's not technically animated here, it is expected to intensify into hurricane status, but that is beyond 72 hours out. And finally, Tropical Storm Lesser is located at 14.2 degrees north and 97.8 degrees west, with a wind speed of 40 miles an hour and a central pressure of 1004 millibars. Lesser isn't expected to last long before making landfall in Mexico, dissipating shortly after touching the coast. So comparing the models on Nanmadol, the first thing to notice is that the models think that this system has pretty much reached its peak. The reasons being is that shear is gradually increasing, sea surface temperatures are dropping just before landfall, although they still remain just barely above the 26-degree threshold needed, and mid-level relative humidity is also on the decline. They also want gradual strengthening of Fiona, with one model being a bit outlandish, but shear is fluctuating for this system. But sea surface temperatures remain favourable. Mid-level relative humidity, also isn't favourable and won't be for a fairly good while. And for the short time that Lesser has, the models don't expect much from this system. Shear remains quite high, although sea surface temperatures and mid-level relative humidity also both remain favourable for this system. Don't forget, you can go to our merch store where you can buy things such as individual animations, mugs and pillows, which Nathan will proceed to throw one of me. Just wait for that to happen right now. Ow, that hurt. Also worth mentioning is our still waiting for Hone shirts, which celebrate the fact that over 1,000 days have passed since a certain RSMC haven't done any work despite activity in their part of the world about 2 or 3 times right about now. Anyways, moving on to the sea surface temperatures, the West Pacific remains piping hot with 30-degree waters. However, where you can see a pocket of 28 right where Nanmadol is right about now. What's next? The Bay and Gal remains roughly 28 as well. I assume BOB08 has taken a bit of a dent in that, although I'm not 100% sure on that, don't quote me on that. The Arabian Sea still remains around 27 mostly, but some isolated pockets near the coastline of 28 and significantly cooler waters off the coast of Somalia. The Atlantic looks to be, if I'm reading this correctly, also around 28 degrees. However, there are pockets of 30 around the the Caribean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, the Eastern and Central Pacific remain roughly around 27 to 28 degrees. Once again, Lesser right now is tapping into those 28-degree waters, and the same with 94E as well. Moving on to the sea surface temperature anomalies, the La Nina appears to be making a resurgence. That's the first thing I've noticed. The Atlantic is more or less above average as well. The East Pacific, and by extension the Central Pacific, remains largely above or at average. The West Pacific, as always, remains above average. The Bay of Bengal also above average. However, the Arabian Sea remains mostly at or below average. And ocean heat content now, the Caribbean Sea also packing most of that energy in the Atlantic. However, there is some energy that the main development region is gaining, and a little sprocket of really deep ocean heat content in the Gulf of Mexico as well. But dragging that over to the Pacific side of things, over in the Western Pacific, there is a lot of energy present to the east of the Philippines, but the further east you go, that energy tends to just fall off a cliff, especially if you go further east than Hawaii. It's just pretty much non-existent. So, on this day in 2010, our main focus tonight was Hurricane Carl, which was just about to make landfall as a Category 3 system. But elsewhere in the Atlantic, Igor was active as a Category 4 equivalent hurricane, just about to impact the Caribbean, I believe. And Hurricane Julia was also active, a Category 1 as of this time in 2010. It was on a weakening trend, I believe, and it was headed to the north, just about to move back into tropical storm status is what I'm trying to say. Elsewhere in the Western Pacific, Typhoon Fiona, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, was also on an intensifying trend, if I'm correctly. It was also, I believe, just about to impact somewhere, Taiwan, I believe. It looks to be a few days out, that's where I've placed it. But it was also known in the Philippines as Typhoon Inday. So, that concludes another bulletin. Up next in the Atlantic is Gaston the Cat, followed by Herman. Up next in the Eastern Pacific, would you believe it, is Madeline, followed by Newton. And up next in the Central Pacific, once again, it's been well over 1,000 days at this point. We are still waiting on Hone. Up next in the Western Pacific is Talas. We've had Nanmadol, which has now reached Category 5 peak. After Talas is Noru. And up next in the North Indian Ocean is Sitrang. Whoops, I got a bit excited there. First up in the Australian region for the upcoming season is Darien, followed by Ellie. First up in the Southwest Indian is Ashley, followed by Belita. And in the South Pacific, next up is Harley, followed by Irene. That's all from me for now. We'll see you for another Tropical Weather Bulletin, hopefully by Nathan, tomorrow night.